As the great Sean Bean / Lord Eddard Stark once said, winter is coming. And here in the UK, that means big coats, woolly hats, and long dog walks. But it also means one other thing: muddy boots. Now, I don't know about you, but my missus is not that keen on me dragging my muddy boots into the house along with my muddy puppy. But I'm not a big fan of trying to take my muddy boots off outside because, one, you get filthy hands, and two, I do this silly hop where I often end up on my arse anyway. So that's not great. However, a boot jack is a great little device that allows you to take your boots off without actually having to touch them. And that will stop me and my puppy being locked outside in the bleak midwinter. Let's make one. For material, any hardwood will do. I'm going to use this lovely 1-inch thick ash offcut that I have laying around, and luckily for me it's actually got one straight edge on it that I can use for my layout later. Now this is a perfect beginner project because to make it, all you need is something to draw out your design on the wood, something to lay out your lines with like a combination square, something to cut the design out. Any saw will do for this. It can be an old tenon saw like this. And then finally, something to smooth or sand the project ready for finish. Now you can make this as complex or as basic as you want. And if you don't want to use hand tools, of course you can use things like a circular saw, or you could use a jigsaw, and you can use a random orbital sander to get you ready for finish. Of course, you can also use table saws and band saws. I just don't have any to show you on this video. I'll put a product link to everything I've mentioned down below, along with some other tools that I use regularly and think are quite useful and affordable. All I'm doing here is putting my layout onto my ash wood. Now, as I've said, this can be as complex or as basic as you'd like it to be. All a boot jack really needs to work is a brace placed underneath the middle of the piece to lift it slightly off the floor, and then a V shape cut into the top of it, which will allow you to dig your heel in and will hold the shoe for you whilst you lift your foot out. For me, I'm going to add a V taper down the sides, going to round the edges of the V cutout for my foot, as well as adding in some horizontal cuts that will add grip but also an aesthetic touch. So this is my rough layout with its V cuts. And then I marked on the front where the back brace is going to go in, just so I know where it is. And then I've got the horizontal cuts I'm making for a bit of a design look, and they'll add some grip. And then here you've got the V taper down the sides as well. Now seems like a really good time to say that if you're enjoying this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. By clicking the like button, you help share this to more people, and by subscribing, you really help my small channel grow. Like I said earlier, pretty much any tool that can cut wood is fine for this job, just like this Japanese pull saw I'm using here. But I recently got a DeWalt cordless circular saw and I was super keen to give it a go. So I clamped down a straight edge and then used the circular saw to cut out the rough taper I wanted for the edges of my boot jack. And I gotta say, this thing was amazing. It was so easy to use and it had such a clean edge, and I was pleasantly surprised because I mostly work with hand tools. Again, I'll leave a link down in the description below if you're interested in one of these. So here is my rough blank, and I decided the next thing I'd do is quickly cut out the circular hole for the middle. Next, I cut the dado where I'm going to seat the leg/brace. The way I did this was just marked it out, popped a knife wall using a set of chisels, and then sawed down using a tenon saw to my desired depth. Once that was done, I took a mallet and my chisels again and just chiseled out the majority of the waist. I don't think you need a dado to seat the leg for the boot jack. I think screwing one in would be perfectly fine, but I wanted to practice because I've never cut one of these before and I fancied giving it a go. Once I'd chiseled out the majority of the waist, I then took my homemade router plane to ensure that the bottom of the dado was perfectly flat. If you'd like to see how I made my router plane, I will pop a video link in the description below. Once I'd flattened the dado, I quickly took the offcut that would become the leg brace, checked it fit, It wasn't too loose around the sides. There was no rocking, which told me that the dado in the bottom was nice and flat. After that, it was time to break out my trusty hand plane and really dial in the sides of the piece to their finished layout dimensions. Of course, a sander or a planer would work just as well for this, but hand planes are one of the cheapest ways to get into woodworking. You can normally pick one up for a couple of pounds at a flea market or car boot sale. You'll learn loads if you fix it up yourself, and once you get them working, they are so satisfying to use. Cutting out the space where you'll place your heel was actually fairly straightforward. I simply marked in about 1 inch from the edge of each side of the piece, traced it down to the edge of the hole I drilled, and then using a tenon saw and a Japanese saw, cut down along that line. Although I have to admit, I think a jigsaw would have made this a lot easier to do. I then tidied up the inside edges with a bit of sandpaper, although a file or a Shinto rasp would work just as well here. If you're lucky enough to have a spindle sander, this would be the perfect time to use that. After that, it was time to work on the other side of the leg brace that I was going to put underneath, and just to prove that you really can find a million solutions to every problem in woodworking, I cut this out using a combination of a tenon saw, a Japanese saw, and then I split the remainder of it open using a hatchet and a hammer. I then of course had to hand plane this until it was parallel with the other side of the leg brace before trimming it to its final length to fit into the dado. After that, I quickly cut in the horizontal lines, which will be used for a little bit of grip and just a nice sort of design touch to make it feel more personalised. Then it was outside and onto sanding, initial sanding anyway, before gluing it all together. I worked my way up through the grits from 80 to 120, 180 and then 240, and I also rounded over all the edges and tidied up the V shape for the heel at the same time. Then quickly pre-drilled some holes for some dowels for a bit of added strength in my dado before gluing it all up and clamping it all together. Once it was all clamped, I then quickly tapped in some beach dowels, and once those had dried off for a few hours, I flushed them off. After the glue had fully dried, I then took it out for its final sanding, and at this point I also used the sander to level off the brace so that it didn't rock on the floor and it sat nice and flat. And just like that, we were ready for finish. I gave it a few liberal coats of Danish oil, which really made the grain stand out nicely, and I think it just came out looking amazing. After 24 hours, I gave it a quick test run, and then obviously got my quality control manager to check it out. There he is, just giving it the all okay. And that was it, ready to be installed in my house. As you can see, a really easy beginner project that you can totally make your own and customize however you see fit. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please do like and subscribe, or check out some of my other videos if you're interested. I will make sure there are cards linked in the description, and thanks for watching.